Welcome to Spatial Signals. It's a podcast about remote sensing and geographic information systems, but more importantly, the people behind it. I'm your co-host, Dr. Brad Shillito, and with me today is your other co-host, coming to us from his pirate radio station, hidden behind Dinah the Pink Dinosaur in Vernal, Mr. Chris McGinty. Chris, how's Utah treating you today?
Oh, that's a good one, Brad. You did track me down. That's a famous dinosaur, so it's not.
Well, that's
quite...
why I figured it makes a perfect spot for your pirate radio station.
Yeah,
right behind a giant pink dinosaur on a sign.
You know, right. So I'm going to tell folks that if you haven't ever been to Vernal, Utah, you need to go. It's actually a fantastic part of the state. There's some great stuff out there, but it's a fantastic day, Brad. How's Ohio?
It is usual, cold and gloomy and waiting for spring to perhaps arrive one of these days. But, we'll focus on a pink dinosaur in Vernal instead.
That's right. Don't hold your breath. All right.
So for those of you just joining us, this podcast is sponsored by AmericaView, the National Geospatial and Remote Sensing Network, which is dedicated to empowering Earth observation. Now, AmericaView has been around since 2003 and has grown from a program just within the state of Ohio to a network of programs that go across the United States, working with remote sensing, GIS, and geospatial technologies in all forms of outreach, research, and education. But today is the third episode in our sub-series here on Spatial Signals, which is called The Squared Circle, in which we have a whole group of guests on to wrestle with a particular topic. And here in round 3 of The Squared Circle, we're going to be grappling with remote sensing in K-12 education. So I am going to throw things back to Chris for a little background on today's match.
All right. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, I'm really excited for today. It's going to be a great episode, and we've got some fantastic AmericaView members here to talk to us. So today on Spatial Signals, we're going to be talking about bringing remote sensing and geospatial education to the K-12 classroom and really why it matters, what many of our members are doing, what this particular group is doing. And this is, really important, Brad. One of these days, we're going to hear your 0 point on the map and get your story, Brad, about, maps and how you got into all of this. But, the bottom line is our world is shaped by maps. It has been, and that's how we have, as humans, have explored and, gone out and sailed around the world and done all these incredible things. But more importantly, really thinking about helping students learn to think spatially. It's not just about technology, but it's about teaching them how to understand, the world around them. We've had opportunities to talk to people like Joe Kursky and some other fine folks that, talking about this importance of understanding, what it is to think spatially and tracking, different things, looking at our phones and maps. But one of the problems that we also find, and we've, known this for, I think anybody who's a teacher or is affiliated with a teacher understands how busy they are. They always have full plates, and the last thing they need is another complex program that they either have to learn or they have to incorporate into everything they're doing, Brad. And I think that's, why it's so incredible what a lot of the AmericaView members are doing across the country, creating easy-to-use tools, maybe digital toolkits. We have toolkits like AGI puts out for Earth Science Week, which happens in October every year, and Earth Observation Day. All these different lessons and posters and some incredible activities that really allow teachers to pick up this material and apply it to what they're teaching. So, a lot of the work that we do at AmericaView, it's part of a bigger goal, and that is really building the next generation of scientists, analysts, problem solvers, really priming that geospatial technical workforce pipeline, if you will, and helping these students understand why it's so cool and how everything is just so important when it comes to mapping and remote sensing Earth observation, Brad. So pretty excited. If folks, and we'll cover this again at the end, but if folks want to go to the AmericaView website, you can find all sorts of awesome resources. And today we're going to hear from some amazing members of AmericaView that are making a lot of this happening and kind of turning all this curiosity into, discovery and helping teachers and, really bringing this power of spatial thinking to classrooms across the country, Brad.
Sounds good. Well, your full card for round 3 today is 4 very special guests. Now, all of whom have been previous guests here on Spatial Signals. You can go back into our archives and hear their individual stories, but all 4 of them have extensive experience with outreach in K-12 education with remote sensing and geospatial technologies. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guests here today. And first off is Dr. Paige Brochu from the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources at the University of Vermont. Welcome to the show, Paige.
Thanks for having me.
Second is Dr. Tracy DeLiberty from the Department of Geography and Spatial Sciences at the University of Delaware. Tracy, thanks for joining us today.
It's wonderful to be here, Brad.
Third is Ms. Amy Logan from the College of Design at Iowa State University. Amy, thanks for coming today.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, returning to the show again is Dr. Dana Peterson from the Kansas Biological Survey and Center for Ecological Research from the University of Kansas.
Hello, Brad. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks again to all four of you for joining us here today. And really what we wanted to talk about was, like Chris said, this whole project that the four of you are working on in terms of remote sensing, K-12 education, and what's going on with it. So first off, just to kind of set the stage for our listeners, what types of educational products and lessons are you looking to develop as part of this whole digital toolkit that you're building? So just want to jump in and kind of give our listeners a little bit of background on the kind of project you guys are working on, the kind of resources you're doing before we get into some heavier wrestling moves here.
So I'll jump in and just give us a little overview, and then we can tag team together in terms of kind of the four things we're doing. But our main goal of the project we're going to be working on this year, the four of us together, is really creating education-ready digital toolkits that we can kind of share and be used across the educational and professional settings that include K through 12 classrooms, community events, workshops, and conferences. And this is really cool because we kind of have four main items that we're going to produce. So I'm going to let Dana, and we're going to kind of roundtable with our four items. So I'll let Dana introduce the first one.
Thanks, Tracy. I kind of had this idea and pitched it to our team here about creating state-level land cover maps that could be printable or kept in digital form. I have used those at some community outreach events, and they're highly popular. People, really want to know about what's occurring in their state in terms of the types of cropland or vegetation types, or looking at urban landscapes. And so they're really interested in where they live, and it's a really easy way to have talking points when you're out in the community and interacting with the public. And so what I would like to do with this project this next year is leverage some of the national land cover databases that are out there, like the National Land Cover Database and the Cropland Data Layer, and leverage those and produce state-level maps for the entire America View Consortium. So everyone has these available to take out into the community, and it's a relatively low cost to print. So I'm excited to have like some branding occur in the America View network, and we're all kind of sharing and using some of the similar information. So I'll end with that. So I guess I'll pass it on to Amy.
Yeah. So I have been involved in the National Council for Geographic Education the last couple of years. And when I've gone to those conferences, I've seen like state atlases. And so I was thinking it would be really cool if, as an America View group, we had a kind of, again, building on this branding idea, like a series of maps that were from like the ESRI's Living Atlas that would be like the same, series of maps for the entire nation that a teacher could come to and look up their state, Iowa, or wherever they are, and then be able to have a series of lesson plans that they could use with that atlas. So the state atlases will be what I'm primarily focusing on, kind of creating a similar look for a story map atlas, and starting with a group of, I think, 10 states, and then seeing how, I don't know how long it's going to take. So I wanted to start with kind of a manageable amount, but the idea is to eventually get them for all 50 states. And then that goes into lesson plans. Tracy.
Well, wonderful. And so we thought we would complement in terms of the map series that Dana's really going to kind of head up, and then with this digital kind of atlas to develop at least 3 lessons really geared at the middle school level that are using the land cover map series and the digital atlas around a couple themes. And we're talking definitely agriculture because that's such a big deal. One, very much around hazards, and then either energy or minerals. And we're going to follow our America View kind of lesson format because in 2024, as part of our Earth Observation Day poster, instead of doing a game, we did a number of different lessons that were part of that poster. And so with that, we really kind of enjoyed that. And we found how important it is to come up with really kind of ready to use lessons for teachers. And with that, we're going to kind of follow the same kind of lesson format that we make sure that it has the educational standards, the science standards that it meets, the geography standards. And goes through a kind of a whole array of, kind of background information. But, it also has kind of, no tech in it to high tech in it to kind of hands-on classroom, or you can kind of take outdoors. And so, we're going to have those kind of themes to it, but some very different types of activities you can do with it, some videos, some kind of GIS type of software stuff that you can use in it, some reading. So you're building some spatial literacy, but also doing a number of different activities to it. And so, it's just trying to think about, like, for agriculture, and I'm in Delaware, and lima beans is one of our big crops, and it's one of the big producers of lima beans in the entire country, right? And you could ask students to think about, what pests is kind of, that we have to worry about there, and what type of, native predator could it be? Or you could think about in the GIS, what is your closest community garden? What would be the closest distance, and maybe the network distance? So lots of fun things that you can build into lessons that students would really kind of be engaged with. So that's what I'm going to kind of head up, that our team's going to all work on together. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Paige, and she's going to talk about the other one in terms of educational activities for community events.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I think kind of a broad theme throughout all of our different parts of this project is really just creating a consistent kind of educational toolbox, right? That, middle school teachers are able to pick up kind of off the shelf across, any state in the U.S., especially, the states involved in America View. So really thinking about that consistency. So then, when these students are going up for high school and all of that, and then, maybe onto college or some technical trainings, they have this background, they have this like workforce development background that we're really able to help with. I think another thing too that we are going to be working on is just creating an automated process, right, to actually ingest all of the different data that's out there around, the national land cover data set, the crop data set that Dana mentioned earlier, to make it, again, just easy to grab off the shelf. Anyone can then create these maps, and it's really about creating these resources consistent across each and every state to really highlight why maps are so important, why it's important to understand, students' local environment. What does outside look like when they look outside their windows of their schools? Tracy mentioned this, right? So looking at community gardens near them, and then looking at these larger kind of agriculture crops that are, I think, important across all of our states. And let me know, Tracy, too, if I missed anything.
No, I think that's just great. And it's interesting how we came up with this project, and just thinking about some of just the basic layers that we use no matter what. And I know when Dana was talking about going out to community events, in some cases you don't have a computer, and just being able to take some of these beautiful maps, like just a Landsat scene of your state, or just the land cover map, is just incredible. And just being able to talk to people and having those maps is just really eye-opening to people, to see an entire state of what the land use looks like and what the a satellite picture looks like and how much you can talk about.
Well, you guys are all doing some amazing things here and have some great plans put into effect for this project you're going to be working on. But my one question I was going to ask was, what sort of challenges have you found in the past, or are you anticipating finding when you're trying to incorporate remote sensing GIS into an already existing K-12 curriculum? Teachers have things they got to cover. They have certain benchmarks they have to hit. How are you looking at really getting these things incorporated, and what sort of challenges are you facing with this?
I think one of the biggest things is the fact that just the lack of awareness of the usefulness of geospatial technologies. So much focus, particularly in the high schools, is around very important, right? Math and English, and some of the sciences. And so they lose that awareness that they get in elementary school and even in middle school of just geography, and some of the geospatial stuff. It is really kind of that just lack of awareness of everything, the importance of geospatial technologies, the workforce needs, and just all the different careers that you can use geospatial technologies with. And then the other thing is just the teaching expertise that's needed. And it's no fault to the teachers, right? It's just you need that teaching expertise and they need that training with it. And so the more that we can kind of do our professional development and that type of thing, and can build those kind of classroom ready things that the teachers can take that stuff and just take it into the classroom, insert it into their curriculum, is easy for them to use.
I think another challenge too that we often face when we do bring, just the idea of remote sensing, GIS, drones, all of that into the classroom is, kind of just a wide range of engaging activities. And I think, again, this is why the kind of 4 goals that we have for this project that we're, very much in the weeds around right now is creating even more engaging activities. So then that way, you have this kind of toolbox where, if students are better, if, they want to learn from reading and then discussions, we have an activity for that. Because we know, you're right, students don't all learn the same way. It's not a one lesson fits all. And so I think kind of having all of these different activities, all of these different toolkits will be really exciting when we bring this to the classrooms. So then that way we can engage with students from all different kind of learning types.
I'll add on too, this is Dana. I'll add on that my experience is interacting with the teachers is that they quickly become overwhelmed with using GIS software, needing to make that heavy lift to be able to teach it. And I think we're, starting to strip that away to make it easy for them to implement. And I've talked to several teachers and they're pretty excited about being able to insert more geospatial curriculum that doesn't require them to learn new software or to manage ArcGIS online accounts or anything like that with their school district.
And again, I would just echo what people have been saying about making it really having those curriculum insertion points that really makes it a lot easier for a teacher that's maybe looking to meet standard X to be able to just come and see, yes, this lesson does meet standard X, and then they can just grab hold of that and implement it, or it makes it an easier case for teachers to be able to pick these things up.
So I don't want to change the direction of this discussion too much, but you've all had a couple of good comments on these challenges. One of the questions from a perspective of sitting at the national level at America View and watching different projects and things happen over the last 8 or so years leads me to wonder, and this might be more philosophical in nature, but how can we better support new teachers that are coming into their teaching career? Maybe they're just getting their teaching degree. They haven't even made it out of college yet, maybe. but they know that they want to be teachers. They're excited about this. I'm going to add a second layer to this, and that is that folks like Joseph Kursky and others who have been in geography education for a long time are now starting to propose that we use geography and spatial thinking in just about all topics, make calculus, algebra, all these different things that we don't normally think as being maybe geographic. So, the first question then is, how do we better engage early career teachers? And the second is, what do you think about, taking some of these materials and tailoring them to fit English, literature, math, all those different things. So maybe go to Dana first for that.
Well, I think some of these topics are easier to integrate into other academic disciplines than others. Like I think about social studies and things like that. But I think there is, room for this in the math curriculum, thinking about data scientists and modeling, land cover or invasive species or a species distribution. That's, the foundation of all of those is mathematical. So I think there's some opportunity there. I don't know how to reach, the new teachers per se. Besides attending some of these conferences like Amy and Tracy did this last weekend. So I'm kind of more new to the K through 12 education stuff and kind of riding on the coattails of Amy and Tracy and Paige here. I do a lot more community kind of events, but I would love to hear what they have to say about that.
One thing we've been trying to do is make inroads with different people from like our College of Education. So I've been working with the pre-service social studies teacher and being able to come in and do like a lesson for her students, kind of showing some different geospatial products and map opportunities that they could have in the classroom. And we're also working on getting in with the agriculture education teachers as well. Last year, we were unable to get in front of the pre-service teachers, but we were able to work with a group of FFA teachers that were currently practicing and be able to kind of do some digital agriculture lessons with them. So that was kind of cool. So we're trying to make connections with different groups of professors that are teaching pre-service teachers. And it's slow. I mean, but once you make those connections, they've been asking us to come back for their next round of students. So
I just want to echo what Amy just mentioned about kind of this relationship building, right? So one thing that we found successful over the past few years is really just talking with the school systems, right? So local school systems, from Vermont. So Vermont's a relatively small state when you think of, school districts compared to other larger states, but it's really talking with the school systems, talking with those science teachers. And then, Chris, I think you bring up a really great point of how can we also talk to other teachers from different disciplines in, K through 12, thinking middle school, right? So maybe even talking through, how can we bring spatial analysis, GIS maps to the English classes, right? So maybe it's thinking about similar writing styles or similarities of poets across the world and how might that have happened. Just kind of, brainstorming off the cuff here, but I think there's a lot of really interesting ways that we can talk about space and why location matters. History, I think, is a great example, right? There's so many ways that maybe we could create inroads with some history teachers as well. But I did want to just kind of put another plug in for Amy's comment about relationship building with school systems. But then I like the idea, too, of talking with the, Department of Educations that we have at our institutions.
Well, I think this is just really good comments. I think it's a really good question that Chris brought up. And I think this relationship building is so important. And I know we've been working with the Department of Education here in Delaware, and that relationship building, it takes a long time. But it's really, really important in terms of them realizing the value of GIS. And we've been trying to get a CTE pathway geospatial, and we're getting there, but it just takes time. But back to Chris's point about how, in terms of this next generation of teachers, I really think it would be very valuable in terms of the curriculum that elementary teachers and secondary teachers, in terms of the curriculum, and that they're getting some GIS training in there. And I think even, I know a colleague I work here at Delaware with, Mary Shorsey, is teaching a class in the spring, human geography, and she's integrating a textbook that uses GIS throughout the entire textbook. So where you can have a course, that is using GIS throughout the course, that's showing that applications, whether it's history or art or English, I think that just makes it really relative to things. And so where the teachers can get that kind of training throughout, and not once they're done. I think that getting it while they're in school would be really valuable.
So thanks, Tracy. I think you're all spot on, and I think those and for our listeners, we talk about pre-service teachers, and these are folks that are they're trained to become teachers. They're working on their certificates, their licenses, their degrees. Something that you all have mentioned now, and I think it's important that we provide a little bit of definition to folks, because this was not something that was in my vocabulary when I started looking into this a number of years ago. But tell me a little more about curriculum insertion points. And I know it might be kind of rehashing what you guys have talked about, but maybe just kind of specifically spelling that out, what it means to you guys and this group in the project that you're going to be putting together.
That's actually a new word that I heard right here, right now. And I feel like maybe I didn't necessarily know that terminology beforehand, but I know what it is. But no, go for it, Tracy. You can do the formal definition, but I was just going to say that's funny that, I had the same thought, and I was like, oh, I know what that is, but needed a minute to actually put the definition.
Well, it's very interesting because I learned it from Chris a number of years ago, in terms of just really trying to take geospatial technologies, insert them into like a history class, right? Taking a lesson, and, for doing some type of little problem solving, some type of spatial problem, or some type of environmental problem that you want to look at, inserting it into a particular topic in the classroom. And so it's just a way to be able to kind of highlight the usefulness of it, where you're just addressing a particular topic in a curriculum.
Right. I think it's important, and I have to blame Dr. Rebecca Dodge for her telling me, this term, and I assume it's a real term out there. It was one that I didn't know when I started thinking about this. And Paige, I'm glad that you had the same question I did. You can put it together, but I think it's important to give a few definitions. So, kind of stepping from that, the importance of getting this stuff into I don't think there's any doubt that it's important to get this into the classroom, important to support our teachers. I'm curious. I think Dana, you made the comment a couple of minutes ago about software, and what you guys are trying to do, if I understand correctly, I should understand correctly. Hopefully, I understand correctly. Is make this software agnostic, or not even need software, something that people can just pick up and run with. But I think historically, and Dana, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You said you haven't worked as much in the K-12 classroom, but maybe Amy and Tracy and Paige, you have. This whole software component has long been where we have failed our teachers, in my opinion. Esri software is incredibly powerful. It's also incredibly complex. And so if a teacher doesn't have time to learn the software, let alone try and figure out how to run it on a computer in a classroom, I believe that's a huge failure. But let's kind of go back and say, how is that changing? How can we now lower that barrier? Maybe it's not using, fancy GIS software, but what other tools are out there that you've seen that a teacher could say, hey, I know that I can, I can pop that up on the screen in my classroom, and I can teach geography or GIS or spatial thinking without, going into this, software realm and needing, almost a degree in GIS software just to operate it.
Well, I'll start out. I think Esri has done a good job moving, to the cloud platform with some of their tools that are now available, and being able to create web mapping applications or using Experience Builder for something that's more customized. That removes a barrier, the software barrier, because you just basically need the internet connection. And Google Earth Engine is another cloud-based platform that you can create web mapping applications with, that we're using pretty often now these days. So kind of removing that software barrier. A lot of the teachers really want something that's just plug and play, that they don't have to deal with technical issues or troubleshooting software or licensing or any of that. I do teach at the Summer Institute at KU, and we have usually about 10 or 15 teachers. And we started out trying to teach them about how they could get ArcGIS software in their district and all of that. But it became apparent that they just don't have the time, So I've been changing it to find ways that's easy for them to incorporate web mapping applications and what kind of questions they can ask from those, and really focus on, like their neighborhood, what can they go out and see and bring it back and see it on a map. So they just really want easy things to incorporate that takes a matter of minutes. Also, I think hands-on stuff is really important. If you go back in time and you think about GIS, it was Mylar overlays. Well, we may be exploring some of that this year too with our land cover maps. That'll be hands-on activities. And Paige and I have talked a little bit about how cool it would be to overlay like a watershed map on top of the state land cover map and talk about your watershed and how land cover can impact water quality, things like that. So, sometimes simple is better,
Yeah, I so agree with Dana that, I used to, when I'd go out to the schools and we did a dual enrollment with our neighborhood high school and, had them load the ArcGIS online. And there was just a lot involved with it, and they were happy to do it and everything. But anymore, and with the lessons that I work with AmericaView, we just go, really go with everything that's just on the cloud. It doesn't require anything. It's a web application that's open. And it just seems like that's just the way that teachers really need to go. You don't need any of that extra overhead of having the IT of a high school or whatever school, that they have to load that software. I also agree with that hands-on here in Delaware, and I think a lot of the states, and Amy can advocate to this, at the NCGE, the National Council for Geographic Education Conference, throughout a bunch of the people were talking about the big maps that they have of the state, and we have one here at Delaware, and we use this big map of Delaware for a lot of kind of intro things that we do with, summer camps with students of all ages, and it's just amazing what you can do just with something like that, that you don't need a computer to do, and illustrative of, kind of latitude and longitude and distance and scale and things. And so sometimes low tech is just really, really powerful.
Well, unfortunately, I see that the ref is getting ready to give us the 3 count here. So I was going to ask if you have a last call for some final thoughts here on K-12 education with geospatial technologies. And in particular, what do you see as the future of remote sensing, GIS being part of K-12 lessons in the classrooms? And Tracy, we'll start with you.
Wow. I mean, I just think the future is just going to continue to grow. I just think we just have to keep at it. It's kind of baby steps, just as I've seen in the past, 10, 15 years that I really kind of been working at this, in terms of kind of just the training that we can do, the lessons we can build, and things. And yeah, I just find it really rewarding in terms of working with teachers. Teachers just seemed excited to be able to work, and be able to, have us come into the classroom and excited about the technology when they can see kind of the real world applications with it. So I see that the future is very promising.
It sounds great. Amy, any last call thoughts here before the ref counts us out?
I'm really excited to work on this project with this great group. I think that it's going to be, I got a lot of energy and I'm really excited to be doing this. And I think that it's going to be great for each of our states as well as for our nation to be able to get these products out into the hands of teachers and encourage more geospatial thinking.
And Paige, climb up on top of the top rope there. What's your final thoughts?
Oh, Brad, I'm just imagining like the cage match right now. Honestly, I just want to echo Tracy and Amy, what you both have just said. It's such an incredible and just exciting project to be working on. One of the big things is like workforce development. How can, middle schoolers and high schoolers prepare for a career in remote sensing, GIS mapping, if they don't know anything about it? And I think that's really at the core of these lesson plans, is really just to get folks excited about how does mapping actually impact their day-to-day kind of world, right? How do we think spatially, even when we don't necessarily think that we think that way all the time? I do want to just point out one thing is that's really exciting is this accessibility and the variety of different activities, right, that we're creating for this partnership and project. Activities that can be used in the classroom, right, if there's internet, but then also activities that folks can take offline outside of the classroom when they're actually kind of getting outside, understanding kind of their local community and environment.
And finally, go for the pin, Dana.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, I'll just echo what Paige said too about accessibility. And this is, from K through 12 and beyond, because we do a lot of community events in Kansas, and I'm sure other states are as well, that even the general public, they're interested in learning more about GIS and remote sensing, and it's because they see the world around us and they live in it, and they can start asking like real world problems with geospatial data, and we could start directing them to, discover more about GIS and remote sensing. And so I think the accessibility is really key, and not, like I said, just K through 12, but beyond.
And that's the bell from the ref. But Amy, Dana, Tracy, Paige, I wanted to thank all four of you for venturing into the squared circle today to grapple with this whole thing with K-12 and remote sensing education. I know at some point we'll probably want to check back in and see how everything has been going with this project, but y'all have some amazing things that y'all are working on. So thank you again for joining us here today.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Chris, where can everybody find us online for more information here from Spatial Signals?
Thanks, Brad. And yeah, thanks to all four of you. And certainly the ref did a great job too. We can't leave Brad out. But folks, if you're listening, hopefully you've already subscribed to the podcast, but you can head on over to Substack and search Spatial Signals. There's a lot of great stuff on Substack. I don't think we promote that enough, but there'd be links, there's photos, there's even a small story of what we're talking about. So head on over to Substack, check it out. As far as our social handle is @AmericaView on just about all the major platforms. You can go and find us there. Head on over to YouTube for some great content from folks like you heard from today, from across the nation with all sorts of different topics. And last but not least, as I mentioned at the top, head on over to the AmericaView website at americaview.org for all sorts of great free downloadable resources, Brad.
And as always, we'd like to thank our editor, Matt Wozniak, for making us sound good, and our theme music comes courtesy of Mr. Matthew Maxwell. Also, if you are listening to this podcast on a platform where you could leave us a review, if you could do that, that would be great. Not only would we really appreciate it, but it genuinely assists that great algorithm in the sky for helping to get this show out into the hands of more people. But we'll be back soon with another episode. So until then, I'm Brad Shellito.
I'm Chris McGinty.
And you keep watching the skies for those spatial signals out there.